The rising in the price of goods and services is called inflation. It is a sudden increase in demand for commodities. When the consumers have willpower to pay more for the goods and services, it is an economical term that refers to a situation when the rise in price of items are due to an increase in production costs, such as wages and raw materials. Inflation makes people's life extremely difficult, especially for the retired senior citizens surviving on pensions and people who earn low or minimum wages. Nowadays, a problem of rising prices of goods and services have become more universal. Every year, thousands of people die from the lack of food in many countries. They are hit hard by the higher rates of goods and raw materials which register a rise every month. They are sometimes compelled to use unfair means to fulfill their needs. This is especially prevalent in developing countries where wages are abysmally low. Here are 5 major causes of inflation. Number 1. Rapid increase in population growth. The excessive increase in population growth is the most prominent cause of inflation. As populations increase at a rapid pace all around the world, the economic resources that are needed sometimes cannot meet the requirements. Think of universal problems such as malnutrition, lack of natural resources, and lack of healthcare. There are things that cannot grow at the pace of human population. Taking this into account, it is only natural that things such as natural resources must inflate, as it is a limited resource and will not be able to meet the ever-growing demand. Growth of population pushes both the needs and wants of certain things in different ways. Most importantly, it raises the possibility to affect inflation. Henceforth, why overpopulation and rapid population growth is one of the major causes of inflation. As the population grows, the needs of people also increase. They need food, clothes, raw materials, goods and services, and more just to survive. Overpopulation that is especially prevalent in undeveloped third world countries increases the total demand for material, food, goods and services. When inflation rises due to an ever-growing population, the rapid increase in population proportionately demands more goods and services to fulfill their basic necessities. The ability of capital per head reduces, which subsequently diminishes the productivity of its labor force. As a consequence, their income will also reduce, and in turn, it will adversely affect the economy. Number 2. The imbalance of supply and demand. An ongoing major cause of inflation will always have to do with the relationship between supply and demand. The first point had pointed out the basic premise of supply and demand in layman terms, but this point will drive the key home. Demand is essentially the seller or the entity that can sell a product, commodity, or service, while supply is a consumption or buyer of said products, commodities, and services. If the demand is higher than the supply, the goods and raw materials will naturally be sold at a higher rate. Inversely, if the supply is higher than the demand, then the goods and raw materials will be sold at a lower rate. For example, natural gas or coal is a great example of how the supply is decreasing while the demand remains relatively the same. When the supply of such goods reduces drastically, the price of goods will increase drastically to compensate for the high demand. Sometimes, the government cannot supply food and other necessities of life due to a much higher demand. This affects the economy because when essential goods and commodities cannot be bought at a reasonable price and locals cannot afford them, the demand will only increase. In return, when the demand increases drastically but no one can afford the prices, sales will not be made and subsequently profits will not be realized by companies. This can drastically impact the global and local economy as demand rises but the supply remains the same. or even decreases as some companies are left to go bankrupt as their supplies cannot be sold at a profitable margin. But more will be said about this topic in point 5. Number 3. Monopoly in a production. A monopoly is basically when a single company or business runs the entire industry of a specific trade and commodity or service. This, of course, has devastating impacts on the local and global economy. When a single entity owns a large portion of a single commodity, the commodity can be sold at any price. A monopoly on a production affects a country's economy in such a way that people are forced to purchase overpriced items just to fulfill their needs. This is especially the case with life-dependent medicine or other goods that are required for individuals to survive another day, and only makes it worse that some private companies are taking advantage of this fact due to the lack of government regulations. Whether or not the company has a lack of supply, they can artificially inflate the price of the good because they are in sole control of the entire market for the said product. Locally, when this happens, those who need the product will either buy it regardless of the price, which only makes the price of the good even higher due to greed or real consumption, or they will look elsewhere for the same product, such as the black markets or international imports. On a global scale, when the individual begins buying up the supply of the good in the international market or in black markets, the vendors or sellers will acknowledge the demand for it, therefore allowing the vendors or sellers to sell a product at a higher price for more profit. With everything being said, it is clear that a monopoly in any goods or services is detrimental to the local economy, which will have adverse effects on the global economy as well. Number 4. Increased supply of money. The government can and will print more money if they have the chance to. When a country comes into some sort of devastating conflict or crisis, basic necessities of life will most definitely increase due to the basic relationship between supply and demand. Take, for example, the pandemic, which has brought many countries down on its knees. In America, when the pandemic hit, many businesses were forced to close down, halting the economy for a long period of time. Due to this, many debts and bills were kicked down the road and into the future, as money was something difficult to come by. However, because of this, the government had to stimulate the economy some way or another, therefore printing an extremely large sum of money to pass along stimulus checks, which were money that was given to households who could not work due to the pandemic. The stimulus checks were supposed to be used for basic necessities. The problem with this idea was the fact that supply was still limited, but the demand became higher. The increased supply of money allowed people to buy things that they would not necessarily be able to before. But because there was a large population that could afford more things without the need of working, it caused a disparity between the supply and demand. Firstly, due to the pandemic, people were forced to stay home and not work. Therefore, the production companies and manufacturers could not make its products. Secondly, since products were not created, it reduced the supply of the product. Thirdly, since the supply of products were reduced, the prices would inflate. Putting the 3 points together, it meant that the supply was restricting while the demand stayed stagnant or kept growing. With this being said, always be aware when the government begins printing out a lot of money. Number 5. Prices of goods and commodities rise in international markets. Rising of price in international markets are one of the biggest reasons of inflation, as many countries, especially for those who import products from other countries, some commodities and raw material need to be imported, sometimes because the labor costs are lower across the sea, or the raw materials needed can only be found overseas. Think about the recent shortages of graphics cards, and how it affected the prices from resellers to second-hand sellers in the global markets. If these markets increase prices of these commodities, raw material, and components of production, then the production cost in any country increases usually proportionately. This is also true in domestic markets. If a country imports goods and raw materials from another country, the importing country imposes high taxes on those products which importing countries must pay for to fulfill their needs. Thus, if a country imports goods from another country at a higher price, it imposes a profound effect on the economy of the country. When the exporting countries sell products for a higher price, the importing countries will sell the same products at a higher cost too, thus making it a cycle where the price will only increase until the demand is no longer difficult to settle. An effect that can happen is the government imposing huge taxes on imports and exports. When larger taxes are imposed on products and commodities, it is usually to fulfill a country's debt. This, however, may be a positive sign for the country, since the increase in taxes will only help the economic development of said country. But, on the other hand, it is harmful for the people with low salary and low monthly income, or those who are working hard day and night just to meet their basic needs. Therefore, when importing countries sell products to its people at a higher price, then this could be a major sign or cause of inflation, especially if it is rising day by day. Let us know more reasons why inflation happens down in the comments below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.